Okay. Boker Tov. The shir is always Leilu Nishmat Chai Avram Ben Meir Tzvi Rachel Leah, and we are in the beginning of chapter 14, Perek Yud Dalet. We're talking about the topic of pre-shoot, topic of English called abstinence. It's referred to other things, but we'll just call it abstinence for now. And in the last chapter, we saw the idea that there really are two types of pre-shoot. There's good pre-shoot and bad pre-shoot. What I mean by that, there's the idea that you take something that is permissible to you, and all pre-shoot has to do with is things that are permissible. Things that are not permissible, you don't have to have a special pre-shoot from. You're not supposed to do that. Like I said, well, I'm only going to speak a little Lashon Hara today. I'm going to step back a little. I'm only go 2 hours instead of 3 hours. It's not pre-shoot. That's stupid. Call a spade, right? But it's a good step, at least. If a person is a Ba'al Lashon Hara, that's all they seem to be able to do, and they want us to ratchet back. That's tshuva. That's not pre-shoot. Yes, you were saying? No? Machsom Lefi. Right. I try not to speak Lashon Hara. Right. Right. You take upon yourself a certain time or hour. So I take upon myself between 2 and 4 to never speak Lashon Hara. Yeah, that's easy. Yeah, I'm really good about that one. In any case, so pre-shoot, a good kind of pre-shoot is a person takes what they need from this world, but not an excessive amount. They ratchet back their needs. The bad pre-shoot is being a complete ascetic, not just like separating yourself from community, separating yourself and not using anything you even need. Person who says, food is terrible, I'm not going to eat food. No, you need food, you need water, you need to be able to sustain yourself. Recreation is important as well, up to a degree. Remember, said this isn't the original thought. Recreation really is a word with a prefix. It's recreate. You're recreating yourself. You're allowing yourself to be able to get back on your feet. So where we left off is actually we're in the middle. We started the first paragraph of Perek Yud Dalet of chapter 14, and we're going to. He said that there are 3 main areas in which pre-shoot applies. One is in hanaot, which is like pleasures in this world, which he said we dealt with already in the last chapter. The second one has to do with law, halacha. The third has to do with conduct. Minhagim, in this case, meaning conduct, could also mean custom. So we're going to start with the paragraph that says pre-shoot badinim. It should be like the second paragraph. Let me see what page. What page is it? Okay, page 91. Second. Okay. Page 91, where it says pre-shoot badinim. Pre-shoot badinim who? Now, actually, is just we started talking a little bit about this briefly last week. I want to make sure it's very clear before I even start to read it. There are those who feel that you become more religious by being machmir in everything, being as stringent as possible. That if you could find a chumrah, even if you have to go digging for it, there's one person who said something in the 13th century, it was machmir on a certain thing, that's your guy. And you're going to go after that because that makes you more religious. Again, foolish. That's not what being religious is about. So what is it? What is it we have to deal with? So what does it mean when we talk about chumrah? So we're talking about stringencies. That's not too disruptive at all. I know they're bringing stuff in. It's okay. It's fine. The general idea is, I'll give you it's a joke, but it really does paint a good picture. There was a guy who was known to be very makel in everything, exact opposite. Very makel, very lenient. If he found one opinion that said, it's fine, he relied on that for his whole life. And he lived a Torah-based life. Passes away, goes up to heaven. God's giving him his judgment. He says, okay, you're going straight to Gan Eden. Ooh, look at this. Because his whole life he kept thinking, look, why is he doing this? There are those who say this is okay to do that. There's those who say, so I did it that way. Fine, straight to Gan Eden. Comes to Gan Eden, he's expecting, the grapes to be hanging from the trees and the vines, and he's having his coffee he's given to him every day, and whatever it is. Obviously, that's not what Gan Eden is. And he comes in a room, bare, the chair, the table. That's it. He turns to God and says, this is Gan Eden. He says, there are those who say that this is Gan Eden also. Meaning, like how we try to find the lowest common denominator for something that you shoot for the bottom, then who knows what your Gan Eden is going to be like. There are others who feel like that they're most machmir possible, that they're going to get the biggest possible Gan Eden. It doesn't work that way. Okay, first of all, we don't know how it works. That's the obvious. We don't know how it works. But it's speaking just from an intellectual perspective, it doesn't work that way, that the more machmir makes you the more religious. Because sometimes a chumrah can become a very dangerous thing. It could be very harmful. I mentioned last week the example of Tisha B'Av, right? Whether it's nidche, not nidche. I received a phone call from someone last year, just before Tisha B'Av, discussing about how they can fast or not fast because they had a particular medical issue. I said, okay, so really you should not fast this year. You definitely should not fast. You should make sure you eat regular. She says, that's good because, I also have X. I said, you have a condition, this condition? I said, yeah. She said, I said, you're never allowed to fast. Maybe Yom Kippur. You got to talk to your doctor. She says, why didn't I even ask this years ago? She suffered terribly every year with Tisha B'Av, but was machmir on herself because how can you do Tisha B'Av? And didn't even think to ask that, well, maybe I shouldn't be fasting because that chumrah becomes dangerous. It's just and I told her she has to ask her doctor about Yom Kippur. Tisha, she should never fast, whatever. And this is true in many areas of halacha. Unfortunately, some people take upon themselves chumras that are very dangerous, or not dangerous, but are negate shalom bayit. There's a famous Rav Shlomo Aviner, as many of you know, is very much into SMSs, right? He gets literally hundreds of questions a day. I don't know how he does what he does. He sleeps about 3 hours a night the most, and he is constantly, he'll be doing multiple things. He'll be teaching, he gets an SMS, he's responding to questions every day constantly, and very often they're very brief answers, sometimes with pithy little responses. He was asked the following question, and I read it once when I was in shul, and I literally burst out laughing in shul Shabbat morning. It's not a great thing to do, middle of davening. He was asked the following question. Evidently, there's a segula that after you don't fold your talis in the Shabbat in the morning after davening, but Motzei Shabbat, then you fold it. It's a segula for parnasa or whatever. So he said to Rav Aviner, he said, I have a problem. My wife wants me to come home after Shabbat right away, after davening, after Mariv. But I want to stay afterwards and fold my talis really nicely for school for parnasa. He says, what should I do? He says, you want a school for parnasa? You want a school for shalom bayis? Forget folding your talis, roll your sleeves up. He says, what do you mean? He said, get home, roll your sleeves up and do the dishes. That's the school. Do what you're supposed to do. We have, it's not necessarily a chumrah, but there's a concept. I'm going to mention this book later today. It's called Bistei Ya'ar, written by Rav Arush. Some of you may be familiar with him. I'll explain a little bit about that later. But he has a story in one of his books that someone came to him. He said he wanted to daven he had problem with shalom bayit. And he said, I want to put a note in the kota. He says, don't do that. He says, why shouldn't I put a note in the kota about shalom bayit? He says, you want to put a note somewhere that really makes an impact. He says, this family down the street, they have unbelievable shalom bayit. The husband and wife, they respect each other, they honor each other, they raise their beautiful kids. Go to their house, stand by their wall outside their house, daven there to have their kind of shalom bayit. Put a note in their crack, the tuck pointing, I guess, but put a note in the crack in their wall. It's more important because then you understand you're getting close to the concept of what shalom bayit is. Some people think that shalom bayit rules over everything. It does in many cases. It definitely trumps many things. But if someone says, I'm going to eat treif because that's what my wife wants and we have shalom bayit, that doesn't work that way. Okay, so let's hear what he has to say about this. Person should always try to be machmir, and that's why I gave the introduction, because it sounds like I can't. Why would I even want to? Nachon. So we're going to see exactly. So always try to be mach. To try to even take into consideration the words of just one individual when there's a dispute in halacha, if his logic makes sense. Meaning, let's say there's a machloket about a specific halacha, a dispute about a certain halacha. One opinion is this, and one opinion is that. We paskin like the lenient one. Well, the other one, I say, oh, I'm going to be machmer like him. Well, if he brought a logical reason, is just not accepted. Yes, you can be machmer like that other person, but doesn't mean you should go running after that if it doesn't have that sense. Even if the halacha is not like that second individual, as long as his chumrah doesn't become a leniency. Now, this second part of the sentence is actually really where he's going to go with this. Sometimes we have a safek, we have a doubt about something. The doubt is whether the halacha is this way or that way. He says a person should try their best to be machmir in those kind of situations. But again, with logic, he's going to explain. But I want to give you one piece of information that he doesn't mention here, that is a place where you should not be machmir. Actually, let me hold on to that. Let me talk about a safek for a minute. Okay. First of all, the word safek in gematria is the same word gematria as Amalek, because one of the things Amalek did was to induce or infuse the Jews with doubt, with questions, and that's the modern day Amalek. Even it's like, well, why do you do this? Come on, this is ridiculous. Okay. Sometimes when there's a safek, there's an expression that is, when in doubt, do without. Sometimes that's okay. You're not sure if this hashgacha is okay. You're not sure if doing such and such thing is okay. You say, you know what, better than not. Okay, that's fine. No problem with that. Where it's a problem is when it comes to hilchot nida, when a woman maybe it's a questionable bedika cloth. Is it okay? You know what? It's probably not okay. I'll wait another day and I'll start again. That's a terrible approach to halacha. When in doubt, do without. Not a good point when it comes to hilchot nida. Ask questions. Make sure you can keep going and checking until you have a chance to check with the Rav. It's okay, it's not okay, or the Oetzet halacha. But don't say when in doubt, do without when it comes to hilchot nida. When it comes to other areas halacha, it's the same thing. But this is one thing I do come across very often. And I try to make sure when I teach Chatan class, I don't teach college class, obviously. When I teach Chatan class, to make sure they understand that, it's where your kula, your chumrah becomes a kula. What does that mean? Your chumrah of let's just wait. What you've just done has been mekil. You've been lenient in the mitzvah of ona. That the husband and wife have a mitzvah to be together the night she goes to the mikvah. Okay, so let's move on. So Chachamim used a pasuk in Yechezkel and made a drasha out of it. It says, "Hinei nafshi lo metuma'a." My nefesh has not become polluted. What does that mean? Shelo achalti behema shehora b'chacham lo achalti mibasar kos kos. I think that when I learned for smicha a couple centuries ago, when I learned for smicha, we were one of the last years where part of the curriculum was learning hilchot shchita and melicha and how you prepare an animal, how you shecht. I actually learned shchita. I think I may have mentioned that here at some point. I learned to shecht. I never finished, never got Kabbalah, but I did learn to shecht. I was fascinated by it, both the anatomy and the actual brilliance of the whole idea. In any case, so we were probably my class, so to speak, my shiur was probably one of the last ones. Now I don't know of a yeshiva that really teaches it practically for rabbanim, because you have shachtim and all that's their livelihood. It used to be the rabbi needs to know, because they need to be the shochet and the moel. They need to be everything. So when you learn the Shulchan Aruch and you learn the halachot of shchita, so you'll see very clearly. Let's say there's a specific issue of a lung, there's a specific issue of another internal organ, or whatever, the head, whatever it might be. And there's a safek. There's one person says the halacha is like this, and you can't use it. One is that you can. And the halacha is determined that you can. You're allowed to use it. Okay. But if the person himself says there was a safek in this particular animal, and they decide that they would take upon themselves, here what I just said, they take upon themselves not to eat that animal, because, okay, there is an opinion that says it's okay, but it's a safek, and I know there's one who says it's not okay. I want to take that upon myself. I'm going to be machmir myself. That's okay. That's perfectly fine. Where is it not fine? Where you come to me with a question, and I say, halacha says this, but it's a safek, and there's an opinion that says you shouldn't eat it, don't eat it. Throw the animal out, get rid of it, give it over to trade. There, what you're doing is you're not being chasam amonosha Yisrael. You're not having, you're not taking into consideration the money of Am Yisrael. I am not allowed, as a Rav, to give you a decision halacha that's going to hurt, that is not the right one, only because I want you to be mach, and just you're going to waste your money. If there's a reason to say no, then it's no. If there's a reason to say yes, it's yes. I want to be machmir for myself. That's not my personality anyways. But if I want to be machmir for myself, I can be machmir for myself. It doesn't cost anybody anything. But I can't do it on your back, which I mentioned last week, the Rav Moshe's tshuva of making coffee at Shabbat. He says, everyone else use kli sheni, I'm going to use kli shlishi. Go ahead and use kli sheni. It's fine. What does it mean? I never ate basar kos. Oh, so the idea was that a person could pollute his neshama by eating meat that a chacham said was okay to eat, even though there's an opinion that says it's not okay. I also didn't eat from an animal that was basar kos, an animal that is known to not be able to live for a year. There are many things that make an animal treif before it's even shechted. Let's say, for example, a head injury or an internal injury to the animal, and that animal will not live for a year. You're not allowed to shech the animal and eat it. It's a sasur. But there are certain situations after which an animal was shechted that it was like, it's questionable. So, you know what, let's just right before, we're not sure exactly the health of the animal. It could go either way. So, just shecht it, just get it over with. Just move along and don't go looking for more problems. You have to you have to check the lungs. But other than that, don't look for anything else. And that's okay. Halachically, that's permissible. He says, I never eat even from that kind of meat. That's also. All these things I'm saying, 100%, you can eat that meat, you can have that chicken, whatever it might be. He chose to be machmir on himself. Says, look, I already explained to you. We're talking here about prushim, those who want to be a little bit more careful, a little more abstinent in their lives with things. But what's the purpose? So I'm going to come back to that in a second. He's saying that for the average person, that's fine. You want to eat that meat, you want to eat that chicken, you want to go to that performance, whatever it might be. Go, eat. It's fine. You want to be a parush? Lo kedai. It's not for you. What's the goal of being a parush? What's the goal? Just to be firmer than thou? My father, I never heard this word before. He made it up. He said that many people walk around with a fromometer. They want to measure someone else's fromkeit. Well, they don't check their own, but they wanted to make sure they check somebody else's fromkeit. Because you want to be firmer than everybody. Is that your goal? For some, it is. Sadly, that's the goal for a lot of people. I can't say the majority, but for a lot of people, I need to look more religious. I need to act more religious. I'll give you an example of how we have a bias in our brains. There's a famous picture painted by Chagall of a person, beard, black beard, wearing tefillin. Some of you, I'm sure, have seen this. I know you're all familiar with it. I just can't describe it well enough. Most people look at that picture and say it's a picture of a tzaddik, rabbi. 99% of the time you say, what's the picture of it? Say it's a picture of a rabbi. Why? Because he has a beard. He looks regal, maybe. I don't know. It's like if you take a picture, I saw this not that long ago online. There's a collage of pictures of Jews that live in Israel from all over the world. And you take a look at them, most people who come from North America have a picture of the white, I would say Anglo-Saxon Protestant, but a picture of a white Jew, an Ashkenazi Jew. That's what a Jew looks like because that's all that they're familiar with. You take some from India, some from Korea, some from North Africa. So we all look at, there's a lot of differences in us. So like, whoa, that person's Jewish too. Boy, he doesn't look Jewish. So we have these built-in biases. And you take a look at this picture, it's the picture of a rabbi. Why? Because he has a beard. So right. He has the tefillin on. So what? His tefillin on. It doesn't make him a rabbi, right? He could be a musician. I don't know. So what is the person? What I'm saying is that some people feel that how they look to the outside world is the most important thing. My Rebbe gave me a smicha He wasn't prone to making too many jokes in class. He had a good sense of humor, but didn't make too many jokes in class. He did tell us something one time that has stuck with me all these years. When a woman is a sota, when her husband suspects her of infidelity. So I'm using the wrong beginning. In a situation where a person was a metzora, not a sota, that one of the processes for which they had to go through in order to be purified was the clothing was torn. It says uvgadav, and his clothing yihiyu frumim should be torn. He said some people live by that credo. What does that mean? So uvgadav, and his clothing yihiyu frumim. You look frum. As long as you look frum on the outside, that's all that counts. Sad commentary on life. How many people come from the United States? I use the United States as an example as tourists, and they go to a shop. They don't necessarily know how to read Hebrew. They don't know if it's a tudah, not a tudah. It's the last week's newspaper hung on the wall, and they see the guy standing behind the counter. He's got a kippah. Oh, must be kosher. It must be like glat mahadran because he has a kippah. Big. Not only is it a kippah, it's black. Not only is it black, it's velvet. Whoa, he is so from. Tell me we don't think that way sometimes, right? We make judgments on how people look. And some people want to be prushim because of that. Machmir, I don't. When a person has l'shem shamayim, when a person's interested in becoming more machmir in things, l'shem shamayim, okay, I accept that. That's wonderful. Person wants to get a little closer. I have had this year, especially in Shemitah year, I've had the following question, at least as recently as yesterday, 2 days ago. Someone's making a simcha, whatever it is, simcha, and their sister has informed them that they will not eat at the wedding. Why? Because the kashrut is Rabbanut Yerushalayim, whatever it is, it's Tel Aviv, whatever it was. I'm not even going to mention which city. I said, okay, what's the problem? She says, well, I want her to eat my wedding. I said, tell her to bring a sandwich. She says, that's not your problem. I have no problem with someone saying they want to maintain a higher level of kashrut. Perfectly fine. There's no reason to not. And in this particular case, I think it comes from a good place. And I said, you don't want to, eat this, or you don't want to eat that. That's fine. You don't want to accept that kashrut. No problem. It's the people who make sure that that is done in such a way that it makes them look like they're more religious, right? And everyone has to notice, right? So I do know of a story. I will not say who this is. That this couple many years ago in North America invited someone to come for Shabbat. I think it was a single girl, I think, and she said that, "Oh, I'd love to come for Shabbat, but," and I'm sure she said it in a nice way. I can't really eat from your cooking. She says, "What's that?" No, it wasn't to do with gluten. Nothing to do with gluten. And the woman said, she says, I think I'll bring my own food. Woman said, you're welcome to bring your own food. If you take it out, I will throw it in the garbage. Please do not come with your own food. If you don't trust my kashrut, please don't come to my house. She didn't come. She didn't even come to the house. I would have answered a little differently. I would have said, it's fine, bring your own food. Please don't put it on my dishes. I don't know what your kashrut level is. We have a right to not trust somebody. Matter of fact, you have a chiyuv sometimes, depending on the situation. But you also have to think logically, to think about the other person. Now, if you know that there's no reason to be suspicious of that family, Rav Aviner has said here, he said here years ago, I never heard him say it myself. I've heard of many people who said it over the years, your meat's ben nevo, and unless you have a reason to suspect the family, they don't keep kosher properly, you go to their house. Shemitah, don't even ask. Just go to their house. Assume that they know what they're doing. Doesn't mean you go blindly, because if there is a reason that they don't keep Shabbat properly, whatever else, but it makes a difference also halachically. If a person doesn't, why am I going on this tangent now? Oh, because this topic, I guess. Sometimes I hear myself talking like, just be quiet and move on. If a person is not Shomer Shabbat, or there's a suspicion about if they're Shomer Shabbat or not, and they tell you absolutely categorically they keep kosher in the home, you can eat chalavi. You cannot eat bisari. Person not shomer Shabbat has no ne'emanut or trustworthiness for bisari. Chalavi, yes, but not bisari. So it's helpful too. Sometimes we have relatives we have to go to for, we have to go to someone's house and they want to bring something out. And so that's.
I would say the reality is, at least suppliers are like
yes.
Their places, their bisari is more like
the yes, the mahpud and the.
They go to flat, like if you're buying chicken meat, you're going to Flatmart.
Correct.
If you're buying halal,
it's just cheese. Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. It is. It's interesting. Now it's possible over time things could change. A lot of it depends on the time period you're in. If that's the situation, it'd be more questionable. The opposite way. Sure. Okay, we did that. Did that also. Very nice. Now, Mar Ukva made the following comment. Now, before I explain this, you need an introduction. Mar Ukva was a person in the Gemara. He was one of the Amoraim in the Gemara. He said the following. Before I say what he said, I'll give you a little introduction. We know that you are supposed to wait after eating meat and before eating milk, you have to wait X amount of time. X is fluid, depending on a person's custom. It could be an hour, it could be 3 hours, it could be 5 hours, it could be 5.5 hours, it could be 6 hours, it could be into the 6th hour. It makes a difference if it's meat or it makes a difference if it's chicken. There's a lot of minhagim when it comes to this. But you'll find nowhere in the Gemara that says you have to wait 6 hours or 3 hours. Nowhere. What? How's that possible? By the way, you'll find, if I'm not mistaken, the Ramah, posek of the Ashkenazim says, I'm not going to say what he says. Skip that for now. Come back to that next time. But interestingly enough, the Gemara does no discussion whatsoever of the exact amount of time between meat and milk. So what did they do? So let's see what it says. Amar Ukva. Ana b'haymilta chala bar chamra legabe abba. When it comes to this issue of how much time to wait between eating meat and then eating milk afterwards, relative to my father, I am like vinegar in front of wine. Why? The ilu abba, whereas my father, kad acha bisra ha'itna. If my father were to eat meat today, lahavi acha gvinad lamacharki hashta. He would not eat chalavi until this time tomorrow. He waited 24 hours between meat and milk. Va'ana, and I, b'hai seudata la'achelna. I won't eat meat and milk in the same meal. B'sudata achrita achilna, but I will eat it in the next meal with no time differential. Meaning, I eat meat, I bench. A little while later, I have my dessert of chalavi. Obviously, his father didn't do what the psak halacha. Psak halacha is not to wait 24 hours. Ella, she'im lo kein lo haya Mar Ukva osa neged zeh, because if that were the halacha, then Mar Ukva himself would have to wait 24 hours. Rather, shaviv machmir haya b'pirshuto. His father was extremely machmir in his what did he say, abstinence. L'chach haya Mar Ukva korei atzmo chala bar chama. That's why Mar Ukva called himself vinegar relative to wine. Because he wasn't such an abstinent individual like his father. A couple of comments. In Kara talking basar and chalav. If a person has the custom waiting 3 hours, if a person has the custom waiting 6 hours, it's very rare they're going to hit the following kind of situation I'm about to tell you. But a person has the 3 hours, and for sure the 1 hour, will have the following happen. I know a number of families that are actually from Holland who wait 1 hour. And they said, very common on Shabbat to have a bisari meal. And after the meal, dessert is ice cream, milk product. Absolutely very common. But there's one thing you have to know. Let's say you're Yaki, you wait 3 hours, or some other people who wait 3 hours. And you're having a nice long Shabbat meal. And it's been 3 hours, by from the time you finish, most opinions, from the time you finish eating the meat, not from the time you bench. So let's say you finished eating at 1 o'clock, the meat, and now you're sitting around, you're talking. It's now 4:15. Time for dessert, about time. We need to get a Shabbat nap in. So you want to bring out the chalavi dessert. been 3 hours since you ate meat. What's the one thing you have to do first? Bench. Because even though, and we see it from the story, even though you can have the meat and followed by the milk 3 hours later, it has to have a separation of the end of a meal. You change your tablecloth or whatever, and you have to bench and to separate the two. So that's something important to know as well. Okay, so there's a custom that you wait a half an hour if you eat something chalavi before you eat basari. It's really just a custom. Many of us are raised up, myself included. The truth of it is, al pi halacha, the only thing you have to do is to make sure you have nothing in between your teeth and just rinse your mouth. Or eat a piece of bread or something that like cleans the teeth, brush your teeth, and you go right into the basari afterwards. And there's reasons behind it. It has to do with the way the food is digested and how it drops up. I'm not going to get into the anatomy of it right now. But the idea is that you have this separation has to be made that cannot be part of the same meal. Where do we get into trouble? And it really does fit in with the concept of pre-shoot. You ate lunch, bisari. You wait 6 hours. Ordinary day. You ate lunch from bisari. You ate bisari for lunch. And you were invited to a party. Started 5 hours later, and it's chalavi. So, oh man, Shevitz. Why I didn't even realize it was going to be chalavi. Yeah, it's happened to me a few times. And then you do the following shikul in your head. It's been 5 hours and a few minutes. It's the majority. It's already into the 6th hour. I know there's opinion that says that if you're into the 6th hour, you can already have. Fine. I'll make it up. I can do that. Do you have al mili smoch? You have on panhum to rely? Okay, there's someone. Is it the right thing to do? Absolutely not. Unless there's a real solid reason, like you found a really good candy bar, then there's a good solid reason. You get a good fresh Kit Kat or peanut butter cup. Then you're okay. Where do people make this mistake or this? When they in many areas, but especially when it comes to food, especially when it comes to basari and chalavi, or in general kashrut, I'm sure it's okay. It doesn't say pork fat on the package. I'm sure it's fine, right? Or I think I finished. It must have been. I'm sure it was done at 1 o'clock with the basari. It was 1:40. No, I'm sure it was done by 1 o'clock. All of a sudden you know exactly when you finished. I think it needs to be playing. I'm sure I've been guilty of it myself on occasion. But that's the farthest end away from being parush. Parush is saying there's no way I was finished before 1:45. And I have to wait 6 hours. That's my minhag of the family. I have to wait 6 hours. Can you change your minhag? The answer is maybe, sometimes, but it's not that easy. I actually gave someone they to this day, they still haven't done hatarat nadarim. They have this heter in their pocket, they still haven't used it, of changing from 6 hours to 3 hours. When I became Sfaradi, so someone said to me, oh, you can wait 3 hours now. I said, what? Sfaradim don't wait just 3 hours. He says, yeah, across the board, they all do. I said, doesn't make any sense to me. I wish it were true, but it's not. 6 hours. But there are times when you can wait. I'll give you one example. It's across the board heter. Is a person I think it's kibbutz Lavi, that is a yaki kibbutz. Yeah. Very much a yaki kibbutz. And the way the meals were structured timing-wise on Shabbat, that you would not be able to eat sudash shlishit, other than maybe a piece of bread, based on the times of Shabbat meal for lunch. And that, so people were there, lived there on the kibbutz. They were given the to just, if I remember correctly, just 3 hours, because that allows everyone to be part of the same group of eating together. So let me just tap this here. Yeah. Oops, I just hit the wrong thing. It's only the people that live there. If you're a guest there, it's a problem. Yeah, it's a problem. But I've had that question. I'm going to be in kibbutz. What do I do? So I don't remember what I said, honestly. But it's a very good question. But you can be there for Shabbat. Okay, so you say, I'll just eat part of stuff. Maybe. But what if you're, why is that okay? It is okay. It's a perfectly fine thing. But yeah, but so you eat bread, you have the jelly, and there's plenty of vegetables. You could. Oh, no, I'm saying you had lunch and it was bisari. And now you're there as a guest for Shabbat, and they're going to serve Shudash Lishit 5 hours later. 5 minutes, it's winter time, let's say. You ate 11:30, now it's 3:30, 4 o'clock, you have Shudash Lishit. And so it's all chalavi, right? You have the leaven and you have the yogurts and you have the cheeses. Right. Yes.
that in order to have a Shabbos lunch, a separate meal, you must have red meat.
Is it written anywhere you must have red meat for Shabbat meal? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. There is the concept of Ein Simcha lebasar v'yayin, that the simcha is brought out more with meat and with wine. But if a person doesn't want meat, if a person's a vegetarian, person is allergic, or like is an alcoholic and can't have wine. I mean, there's plenty of reasons to not. But if you have meat, you don't want. I'm downstairs, so just feel free to bring.
Quite a few people, and this one, buffer came to visit in California, and of course invited him.
Yes.
My husband. And,
not mentioning anything. Yes.
And he said, but do you say, first time me.
Right.
And I said, I'm vegetarian because we were at that
Right.
time for health reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, oh, I can't come to you. And I said, well, we'll be sorry.
Did he claim that there was a requirement to have red meat? Uh-huh. Okay. Okay. Right. Okay. Very good. So the fact that he said, yeah, a person didn't want to come to be with you because you weren't going to have meat for the meal. Okay. So if his response had been, I can't come because you're not serving meat and you're supposed to have meat, I would not accept that. Obviously. If he says, my father would prefer I have meat for lunch, for Sudat Shabbat, I'm okay with that for one reason, two reasons. One, it's Kibbud Av V'em. That's his family custom. That's what they feel. That to them is Shabbat. Okay, I know this one guy that if he doesn't have chicken soup Friday night, to him, it absolutely wasn't even Shabbat. Might as well eat Tuesday. That's a Yaharei Val Yavor by him. Okay, that's what it is. That's his Mishigas. Fine. Okay, but I understand your perspective 100%. I was looking at the time because it's going to time out soon. Is 100%. But he could have still come to you without hurting your feelings, making you feel bad. But if he's doing it from the perspective of Kibbud Av V'em, and that's his family custom, okay, then I would accept. If he says, I don't trust your kashrus, you have to have meat on Shabbat, he quotes some obscure halacha which doesn't exist, he wrote it himself, found in Masechet Baba Maisa, okay, then that's just plain foolishness. Okay, so yeah.
I think the Samaritans keep 6 hours between milk and meat.
Do they really?
Yes, the first song, and they have no storage.
6 hours between meat and milk for the Shomronim,
yes.
The Samaritans.
Yes.
Interesting. Very interesting. Wow. Mm-hmm. Never knew that. Okay. Want to talk a little bit next week about this idea of more pre-shoot, but this one next, we're going to talk about the concept of hitbodedut. A little bit next week, and then a lot the following week, hopefully. We're going to deal a little bit with Bistei Ya'ar by Rav Arush. If you're not familiar with him, you will become familiar with him. He's a person who literally changed my life with his writings. I don't particularly care for his speaking, but his writing is outstanding. And that's okay. It's my own personal perspective. But there's some part of this book that, I mean, in the literal sense, changed my life. And I want to share that with you in context of a little bit from this chapter and a lot of it to the next chapter. Bezrat Hashem. Have a great day.